This is Faith Story. It's a digital platform to be able to encourage individuals and to challenge every single one of us with our walk with the Lord. It's that close and personal relationship that is the most important and the most powerful relationship that we have. And we want to really just be there to walk alongside you as you journey on this road of life, on this story that God is writing. This message is one of those that it doesn't really matter where you are on that path, what chapter you're in your story. It's one that's going to hit home, because at some point, every single one of us is going to feel offended. And then what do we do? Do I take that offense? Is it my right to be offended? Must I do something with it? Or is God calling me to something greater? So now, if I ask, are you someone that is easily offended? Somebody who feels that your opinion, the things that you stand for, you've got to fight for those things. And maybe you're loud about it, and that's just part of your personality. Or maybe you're quiet about it, and you hold on to those offenses, and they sort of fester into resentment. Well, either way, we want to look and we want to say, well, what is God's intended purpose? And what does He want us to do when we are offended? So we can see throughout the scriptures the example of the Lord Himself. Of all the people, there was a lot of offense, a lot of things that went wrong, a lot of things where they had to face confrontation and conflict. But we don't want to look at all of the world issues, because that's not really the purpose of Faith Story. The purpose of Faith Story is to look at our close relationships. So starting with the closest, which is that relationship with the Lord, and then looking at the ones that are close to us physically, the people that occupy your life. And we want to say, well, what do we do with those offenses? Because the people that are closest to us can sometimes hurt us the most. And we want to be able to say, well, if that is the potential, if that is the risk, then how do I love in the way that God is calling me to love in the face of offense? If I take this fast-paced world, it's calling us to react all the time because there's just so much happening. There's information coming at us. There are keyboard warriors, these social trolls, and there's inflammation and fuel that's just like you have to say something. It boils up inside of you. The emotions run high. And it's for us to remember that those offenses are just distractions from what God is really calling us to. He's calling us to something very different, to living a life that is very different. And instead of us being divided over all of these different opinions and all of these different issues, it's for us to be able to say, what is the bigger picture? What is that greater purpose that God is calling us to? Because if I allow myself to be offended about a lot of things, it's going to become the focus of my relationships. So instead of listening to understand, I'm now going to listen just so that I can retort, so that I can react, so that I can find something to score points because I'm hurt and I'm sensitive about it. And if that's what we're going to do, then we're going to see that our reactions are going to cause damage. And instead of it now just being the offense that is the issue, the insult, the thing that we're like, how could they say that? How dare they? Like, I can't believe it. Instead of that now being the issue, well, now that is still part of the issue, but now you also have to deal with your reaction and the things that are said in the heat of the moment. Because when emotions are running high, well, understanding and learning is very low. And we've got to say, I can't always just look at the surface issue, because it's often rooted a lot deeper than that. So just excuse the example. Your mother-in-law is visiting, and you know that she always has something to say about your cooking. So now you're trying to impress, because that's just what we do, is the area that we feel insecure about, we try and prove a point. So now you're going to bake this cake, and she comes into the kitchen and you get a little bit nervous, and she starts looking over your shoulder and she starts asking you questions, but you just feel like you're asking me the questions only because you are trying to tell me that I'm doing something wrong. Now, that is an assumption. So she hasn't actually said anything, but you assume because you know that there are other much deeper issues, because it's not actually about the cake. And you don't feel it's about your cooking. It's actually all the other feelings that lie underneath that as the daughter-in-law. You feel that she doesn't accept you, that you're not good enough for her son. Maybe you feel her son, your husband, prefers her cooking, whatever the issue might be. The fact is that it's never really the surface issue. It's not about the cake. It's not about the fact that your cake is slightly different to the way that she would bake it. It's about not feeling accepted. It's about not feeling loved and feeling a part of the family. Those are the much deeper issues. But we don't even get to those issues because we take offense right at the surface. Now, if somebody is saying something that truly is offensive, they are genuinely trying to hurt you. It's not just you're assuming or reading into the situation. You still don't have to take the offense. It's possible that somebody can want to insult you and you can still say, well, I'm just not going to be insulted. So our reactions are what lead to the regrets that we have. So when I feel insulted or I feel offended, I don't have regrets over that. It's the way that I respond to that. And then what happens after that leaves me days later still feeling bad about it, where I'm mulling over it. I'm thinking, I shouldn't have, maybe I could have. How can I do this differently? Now, it's not everybody that's going to react outwardly. It's not everybody that's going to allow their emotions to flow over and for the regret to build like that. The other path is just as dangerous. It is the path of, well, I'm just going to internalize. I'm going to hold on to what you said, and I'm not going to forget it. And I'm going to read into everything else that you say, and I'm going to check it against that filter to see, well, is that now what you mean again? Because I'm still hurt by what you said last year when you came to visit. And it's been festering, and they've forgotten about it, like a long time ago. They didn't even know that they offended you. That path is also, it's a path that is filled with so much damage and resentment and bitterness. And that is a root that is going to take hold of your life, and it's going to destroy your relationships. And that's not what God has called us to. God has called us to something so different. His perspective on being offended and what to do with insults it's a very different perspective, to the point that it seems very difficult, but it is so godly. These two proverbs that I want to read, they explain it in the best possible way. So Proverbs 19 verse 11 says, good sense makes one slow to anger. So there's the control of the emotion. And it is your glory to overlook an offense. So literally God says that when somebody says something insulting or offensive to you, it is an opportunity for you to have glory. It's an opportunity for you to experience and to practice something that is going to be beneficial, which is to overlook the offense. Like, how amazing is that? And then in Proverbs 12 verse 16, it says, fools show their annoyance at once, which means that you are quickly offended. But the prudent, which is the sensible, overlook an insult. So God is saying, He's not saying people are not going to say offensive things. He's not saying that people are not going to try to insult you. He's saying you have a choice. Even within that, you can choose to ignore the insult. You can choose to overlook the offense. Because when you do that, it allows for you to get to the deeper layers. It allows for you to deal with issues that if we're just going to react in those moments and allow the emotions to run high, well, we're never going to deal with the stuff underneath. And it's possible that relationships can grow cold over years because that's the level that they operate on. So the whole time, we're going to just take these little jabs at each other. And we're going to feel offended and we're going to offend. And as we do that, we allow our emotions to be a part of it so that it feels good. It feels good when I'm angry. It feels good when I can say something that hurts you. But by doing that, you're never ever going to deal with the issues that lie underneath. You're never going to be able to find the other person's perspective, which is a genuine perspective. And you will have so much natural empathy and understanding when you discover what their perspective is. The other day I was driving home and it was sunset and the sun was right in my eyes and there was a vehicle in front of me and the vehicle swerved quickly. And then I realized, it's because there was a cyclist on the side of the road. And it was a young girl and she was on the wrong side, so she was coming to the oncoming traffic and he wasn't expecting her. But the issue was he couldn't see her because the sun was in his eyes. And I thought to myself, from the cyclist's perspective or from the pedestrian's perspective, they are coming with the sun behind them. So they literally have the brightest light in our solar system that is shining on what they're looking at. It's clear. Everything is clear to them. And I could well believe that they would think, how can you not see me? Because I can see you so clearly. And isn't that often just a picture of life? Because we're coming from two opposite ends. That my perspective and your perspective could be very different. Not that they're wrong, but we literally, and when I understand that, well, then the empathy is there. So what is the example that we have that God says? And this is the ultimate example. Well, that is Christ being crucified. In his final moments, you want to talk about being insulted. That wasn't just an insult, it was assault. Physical, to the point of death. And when Christ is there on the cross, what does he say to his offenders, to those who have put him on the cross? He literally prays and says, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Look at the level of understanding, of changing the perspective, not looking at his own situation and pain and suffering, but saying, they don't get it, and I can't expect them to. They don't understand. Forgive them. Now, if that is what Christ was able to do at that level, well, then I think we can take some motivation from that. Because I certainly haven't faced offense or insults to that degree. And mine are really petty in comparison. So why is it then that I can't adopt that same godly attitude? Well, here's some practical help. So in a moment when you feel insulted, when your emotions are running high, there's something that I want you to be able to hold on to and to be able to remind yourself of and to say, okay, hang on. Here's the situation, because Proverbs tells me that I get to actually find a really, really good thing here. This could be a moment of glory if I can handle it differently. And here's what you can do. Think, pray, say. So if you can just remember, when I feel my emotions in a situation where something is said, maybe I've received a message or an email, or I'm in conversation and somebody says something, the emotions, they're familiar emotions that start coming up, and I feel like I'm now going to think, pray, say. That's all you want to remember. Think, pray, say. The thinking is I'm going to take what was said captive. which means I'm not going to allow it to run all over the place. I'm going to hold that thought and I'm going to take it to the Lord. And I'm going to say, Lord, and that now comes the praying part of it. I'm going to say, Lord, what do you want me to do with this? Because when I take it to Him, the whole perspective changes. When I'm in conversation with the Lord, it's very difficult to be selfish and self-centered and petty and to be easily offended and insecure. Because now I'm like, okay, I know what the Lord had to endure. I know what His great purpose is and plan and the love that He has for me and who I am in Him. So all of that comes into play when I'm praying to Him. And instead of me then being selfish and self-centered and saying, well, they need to hear my opinion on this, well, then maybe it's going to change to they need to see Christ in me and how I'm going to respond. And once you can get to that second part of the process and you speak to the Lord, and then if you feel, okay, I really do need to say something. Well, firstly, what you're going to say is completely different and how you're going to say it is completely different. But you might even get to the point where you think, you take the thought captive, so isolate it. This is the thing that you've said that I'm offended by, that is causing an emotional response. Then I'm going to pray about it. And as you are praying about it, just the time that it takes to just have that conversation with the Lord is time that might get your emotions in check and under control so that you won't even have to say anything. And that will allow you to then continue in the conversation and possibly to gain that greater understanding so that you can see that there is that moment of, okay, now I see why you said that. And I can understand that there is far deeper issues that we can deal with. I know that in our Christian walk, the great challenge is not to represent yourself. The great challenge is to be Christ's ambassador. It is to be His light, to show His purpose and His love to those around us. And as we do that, well, that's when we can become conscious of the choice that we have in moments of offense. So when I feel insulted, when I feel that that is offensive, I still have a choice. And that choice means that I get to be able to say, I would rather use this as an exercise to demonstrate to myself my security in Christ. Because what He says about me is far greater than what anybody else says. What anybody else says doesn't change who I am in Christ. And when I can do that, well, then I realize, I understand. When somebody says something that really is hurtful and offensive, it's not to say that the emotion's not going to be there. It's not to say that you can't feel hurt. The question is, what is my choice in that moment? And how does God want me to respond? Is that difficult? Yes, it is incredibly difficult to do that in that moment. And that's why you have to think, pray, and then say. Just take time to set your thoughts on who Christ is. Is it difficult? Yes. Is it different to the way that maybe you would want to naturally respond? Yes. Is it different to the way that the world responds? Absolutely. But that's what God has called us to. He has called us to be different. He has called us so that our behavior separates us from the rest of the world. And that is the process that God is busy with, so that my character can become more Christ-like. And not taking offense is one aspect of that. It is being able to respond in a godly, Christ-like way. That in those moments, well, that's when you realize that people will know who you are. Not just by your actions, but they will know you more by your reactions, how you respond in certain situations and circumstances and it's incredibly impacting, where they know, oh, I would have handled that differently, where they think to themselves, wow, I'm so surprised that you weren't upset by that. And the way that you acknowledged the offense but didn't react emotionally, that is powerful and impacting. And that's what the Lord is calling us to. That's what he demonstrated. That's what his example was, to the absolute extreme. And he's saying, can you do the same? So that instead of our hearts growing hard and callous and cold in our relationships, because we keep being offended and allowing offense and trying to offend, that there's something different, a different way that we respond. And that's what Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 is encouraging us to do. So this is what it says. Colossians 3, 12 to 15 says, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies. Allow that softness to be there. Put on kindness and humility and meekness and patience, long-suffering, bearing with one another. There it is. It's not saying that it's going to be easy. It's literally saying you're going to have to put up with each other. And forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint or an offense against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you also must do. You must forgive. But above all these things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you were called in one body, and be thankful. And that's really what we want to take from this, is I don't have to be offended. I have a choice. I can choose to respond in the way that Christ wants me to. Think, pray, say, and use the opportunity for God's love and his light to be shown to the people that are closest to you, because that is what Christ came for the relationship with him and the relationship with those around you, with your loved ones. And may you take up this challenge and allow the opportunities to mold and to shape your character and continue that faith journey that you are on, so that God ultimately will be able to do the work that he wants to do in you and through you.